as well too. Like even in the Bible, it says about fatherlessness that God can be your
A father to
father.
the orphans.
Mhm.
He's a father to the orphans.
Yeah, and I struggle with that though. It's more of like, well, you're not physically here. You need to be tangible. Like, but you know, it's a journey everyone goes through.
That's the faith part of it.
Mhm.
The
It's a
component
journey.
of faith, yeah, to believe. And I feel like that's something a lot of people struggle with God being their heavenly Father. But it's like it's almost like you can only have a relationship with Him if you call Him on the phone, which means you pray. If you text Him, like you're praying, you know what I'm saying, and then like reading about Him in the Bible, and even like He will meet you where you're at.
Exactly.
You know, I've had a lot of moments like that, especially coming back here after my marriage fell apart, and like crying out to God, like, what am I supposed to do now? What am I going to do about my life? And I'm hearing Him say, give me time. And then throughout a period of time, in the first 3 or 4 months that I've been back, people have been speaking to me Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose.
Exactly.
And that was over and over, and I read it in books, and people were telling me that. And then one of my brothers at church, he said it again out of nowhere. And I'm like, there goes that verse again. But there's a thing in that, a word in that, right? Like, so we're, especially in our country, we're people of instant gratification.
Right.
Like, we want it now.
Right.
And everything's at the click of our finger or the tap of our phone.
Exactly.
And he pointed out the word work. All things work together for the good of those who love God. Yeah. And like, just knowing me and my recovery, I've been in recovery for 2 years.
Praise God.
And it's taking work.
Yeah.
That work means time.
Exactly.
A lot of tears, a lot of
Exactly.
lonely, dark nights, and like, God, I need you. The devil's trying to tell me to kill myself. And then he reminds me of my son and why I can't do that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And so that's something else I want to get into, because there's a reason also why a lot of men are not allowed in their kids' lives. Because I was abusive to my son's mom. She doesn't trust me and feel that I'm safe enough for him to even have conversations with me and video chats because of the trauma that I exposed him to through the abuse. Right. And so I can't see him or talk to him or have direct contact with him or visits till next year in August.
Okay.
And like, to a lot of people that sounds harsh, but they weren't there.
Right.
And I look back and I remember like all my struggles and my issues and my sins coming out and manifesting and what I did to her and everything I did to her. All the abuse, all of it, in front of our son. And while I'm holding him. That's horrible. Like, that man is sick. He needs help. He shouldn't be around this kid till he gets better.
Right.
And so, like, I'm not fighting her on that. Because it's both, right? Like, so there's studies that show the impact on a child when they are not in their father's lives from the ages of 3 to 5 and then so forth. But then there's also studies that show the impact on a child when they are exposed to abuse and trauma. It's both. And we can stand on her on one side, me on another side with these professionals that have studied this stuff. And we're both right. So, now what? You know what I mean? And I had to go to God. I was fasting for a week, 5 days straight with no food. And I don't know why I'm fasting, but he told me. And then he told me to do it, so I started doing it. And then when, so she emailed me with this whole, her terms, right?
Right.
Of this parenting plan. And I was like, oh God. Now I know why I'm fasting, and I don't know what to do. I know what everybody's telling me to do. Take her to court. That's not right. You're going to win in court. Fight her. I'm like, I don't want to fight, though. And God was like, don't. You don't fight like the rest of the world does. Well, what about my son? Trust me. I have a plan for his life. So me being able to send him videos and not see him or talk to him, those videos are for him to see me anytime he wants and just talk to me, hear me talking to him. Video chats were more for me because he's only 3. And his attention span is, hey, Dad, go back and play.
But can I ask you a question? By you doing those video chats, did it also put you in a place of realizing how you need to work better for him, for his long term?
All the time, all the time. You know, and that's what God used to give me humility and peace to grant her what she's asking for. Not fight her, not take her to court, and do this crazy work with him, like work stuff where I just cry myself to sleep. Like, oh man, I'm remembering all these things and experiences with my own dad, and then even like the homies I grew up with, they don't have their dads around, the fathers that a lot of guys grow up to become, and yeah, and then he told me, imagine the kind of man you're gonna be, who you're gonna be at the end of these 18 months.
So, let me turn another question to you.
Hold up, are you interviewing
I'm
me?
interviewing you
Okay,
now
I'm
for a
just making
moment,
sure, I'm just
for just a
clarifying.
little bit. So with that being said, with the experience you had with your father and also your homies that they didn't have fathers, at any point in time did you learn how to express yourself emotion-wise?
No.
And if you even thought about it, how did that make you feel? What did you think of yourself, or what did your...
There was an experience when I was younger. I was a kid, we were living in New York, and
You live in New York?
yeah, upstate New York.
Oh, I lived in the city.
Oh
I grew
yeah?
up in Brooklyn.
BK, shout out to Brooklyn.
There you go.
Really?
Yes, I did.
That's what's up, that's what's up. I got homies from out there. So this conversation that I had with my mom, it left me feeling like I was wrong about everything. All of my reactions, what I said, what I did, and then, you know, she was like, well, somebody's gotta take the blame and you're the oldest. And I was like, well, I wasn't even here though. Well, that don't matter, right? So, I felt like, okay, then how I feel about anything must not matter. So I began to not express myself in our home, because it always came out misunderstood. You know, and my dad would say, why are you crying? If you want to cry, I'll give you a reason to cry. Come here, I'll give you a reason to cry. And so, like, I ended up taking that out into the streets, and because I couldn't express that, then everybody out there is gonna feel me. You know what I'm saying? And out there, like, no, we're not talking about no feelings, bro. What are we, a bunch of girls? It's not the Breakfast Club. No, but that's the perspective, though.
I understand. I'm like, what is it?
That's the perspective, and it's wrong though, right? But like, girls freely talk about how they feel amongst their girlfriends. God, we can't do that. You can't say, man, I'm scared about this or that, or like, I'm kind of sad. Like,
It's the man up mentality.
oh, that phrase is kind of sickening. Like, and my dad told me that when I got arrested in Hawaii for drug paraphernalia in my car, and 11 months later I get something in the mail saying I got to appear in court, and I'm like, oh no. And he had to appear to his commander, and he got in trouble, and he told me, if you do that again, you're going to get the whole family kicked off base.
Wow.
And I was like, that was heavy on me.
Right.
And I was like 17, 8, I think it was 18. And I couldn't say it, but I really just wanted him to like hug me and say, it's gonna be okay, you're gonna get through this, I'm with you. And now looking back, what he was supposed to tell me was like, this isn't the life God has for you. God has a different plan and a different purpose for you, and you're not walking on that journey, and we need to get you back on that path. What he told me was, don't cry now, man up. You did this, now you have to face it. And you're not a good criminal, so I think you should pick a different profession. And you know what that did to me? It made me become a better criminal. And I never got popped for dope ever again after that. But I didn't stop.
Right.
Matter of fact, I went in deeper.
Life lesson, right?
Oh man, praise God that I didn't get stuck in that deep end.
That's a good thing.
You know,
Was your dad present?
he was there.
Was he present?
I guess you really are interviewing me now. He was emotionally unavailable. So that's like the different dynamics of fatherlessness that we want to point out to people is it's not just about an absent father who's not in the picture, that's not there at all, or is sometimes there but hardly. There's also fathers that are there that are emotionally unavailable to their kids. And so in their kids' eyes, they're not there. I remember watching This is gonna sound funny. I was watching Rocky V. Remember Rocky V?
Yep, Rocky.
With his son
Mm-hmm.
in school having problems,
Mm-hmm.
and he's over here trying to train this other fighter and living his glory days through this new fighter.
Right.
And his son is over here getting beat up and robbed in school, and he's trying to get his attention. I remember walking away from that movie, and it did something to me, and it hit something in my heart that I felt like I was lost, and my dad wasn't there, and he wasn't noticing me, and I wasn't important to him. And I remember walking down the side of this house. I can see it. I can see it right now. I walk out our crib. This building is like this. There's a building right here. Had a walkway with all these storages and the carports. And I started walking down that sidewalk. I don't remember where I was going. And when that feeling, that emotion became overwhelming, instead of crying, I just took off running
Wow.
because I couldn't cry. I wasn't supposed to. I'll give you a reason to cry.
And that's always been in the back of your head, which understandably you passed on to your son, but at least he's young enough that it cannot continue because you're breaking chains now.
Yeah, so is his mom. She recognizes the generational curses from my family and her family, and she's great. She's wonderful. She's helping him to learn to express when he's upset, when he's mad, and to give him time.
Could I take one moment to interrupt and look in the camera and let everyone know that I applaud him for actually showing up and doing the work, and also your ex-wife as well for investing in your son to be better and to break generational chains so that he does not continue that when he decides to have a family and to become the father that he is to become. So I just want to take that moment just to applaud you for that.
Thank you. So you're a woman of faith,
Yes.
and you've been doing this research on this topic, and you've been meeting with people, you talk to people in the community. What are your thoughts about that concept, that phrase, generational curses, generational chains?
I truly believe that it goes across all classes, creeds, and backgrounds.
Do you think it's a real thing?
It is a real thing. I mean, I could even give it, testimony of my own. I think that our culture is somewhat similar because I grew up where corporal punishment, you got spat, swat, hit, whatever, for whatever things, and being an older child too, I understand that. On the same token, there are certain things that sometimes you cannot be able to explain, especially emotions and like anger that comes out of nowhere sometimes, and you're like, why am I feeling a certain type of way? And I just know that there are certain, for me personally, even as a mom, that I have to break for my sake, but also for my kids' sake, so it does not continue over time. But I do heavily believe in generational. There's
So
good
it's,
and bad.
yeah, it's not just, so as people of faith, we believe in a thing called generational chains, things that get passed down through the generation, through your families. It's not just physical characteristics and attributes
Mental.
of a person, like, oh, you look like your daddy, or you look like your mom, or you got your dad's eyes, you got your mom's nose, and you know what I mean?
Right.
It's also like the stuff that they struggle with mentally. Addictions get passed on.
Exactly.
Like if you want proof, anybody you know that's addicted to drugs or alcohol, is their dad or their mom addicted? Was their grandfather addicted? Were their uncles addicted? Gangbanging is the same thing with gangbanging. Like it's the cycle gets passed down generations,
Right.
and now we are destroying generations through the violence, through addictions, and stubbornness, and not getting help.
For those that may not necessarily believe in that, I do also believe in cultural DNA, that there's something within our genetics that is passed down over, from generation to generation. And along with
Cultural
that,
DNA.
cultural DNA. Like there are studies that have actually been coming up regarding that within your actual genome, I'm getting like geeky here, in your actual trait, like DNA, that there are certain things that are passed down from generations before you.
And based on like your culture and the customs
And
and,
the customs
heritage
and
of
various
your
different
culture.
things.
Wow,
too.
that's crazy.
Yeah, and even sometimes if you think about like when your dad or your mom, or especially like say like your dad, if he experienced something at a certain age, and when you turn that age, you notice that there's something that's not right, and you're like, why am I like struggling with this? And it comes out of nowhere. I'm a big believer of that. I just can't prove it, but I do believe at certain times, at certain ages of like my life, or even my daughter's life or her son's life, if
they struggle with certain things, and you're like, you can't pinpoint it, but you just know that there's a struggle. So then having the tools in your tool belt to be able to give them the tools that they need, that they can be better and to work through it, not around it, underneath or over it, you work through it.
That's the only way through is
Exactly.
through, right?
That's through.
Wow. You were just saying something, cultural DNA. And the theme of this show is cultural transformation. As you're saying that, like, I remember hearing that when my dad was growing up, he used to get in trouble and beat up anytime my uncle would get into a fight and he wasn't there. Regardless if my uncle won or lost the fight, even if he won the fight, my grandparents would get on him and whoop him for not being there because he was the older brother. He was
Gotcha.
supposed to be there.
Gotcha.
And that's like, so that's a thing in our culture is like, you're the oldest. So remember I was telling you, like, I wasn't even there. How's it my fault? Well, you're the oldest. You're
You
supposed to
should
be
be
there.
there. Doesn't matter.
I'm supposed to know that the
Don't matter.
it
Supposed
don't
to be
matter,
there.
right?
Gotta
And that's
be
the
there.
culture stuff. So I'm thinking about like the culture in Spokane, the culture in our society around the country. What's the culture, right? And I read in a book to transform a city, and it said that it's the city that determines the culture of its people, not the church. It's the city. And what's the narrative of the city? What's the theme in the history of our city? So like I look at Spokane, I've only been here 2 years, and it's a beautiful city, and I love it. The people are awesome, the people are great, they're unique, the city is unique. I look at the city of Spokane as a beautiful woman that has a scar running down her chest, and it's a deep scar, and it's covered by garments of beauty and uniqueness and abstract and all these other components that you see about the city. It's covered up. So like there's issues underneath.
Oh, there's lots of issues.
Yeah, even in this city. And you don't see it, and you don't normally notice it, especially if you're a tourist or you're new to the community, to the area. But it's there and it's affecting the kids. Like you mentioned the youth. I worked with Youth for Christ, Jeff Ross at Youth for Christ, and all the kids down there, like, dads are just not around. And if they are, it's not a good situation.
So what is the common theme as to why the dad's not around, other than?
I was gonna ask you, you've done the research.
Oh, I mean, within Spokane, I'm like looking at a little bit more broader.
I feel like, so one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, how did you deal with whatever issues you had with your father? He wasn't there and he died when you were 16.
Anger.
As
Straight
you
up
got
anger.
older,
As I got older,
you
straight
seem
up
like
angry.
you're free now.
Because it took work.
Okay.
It took work. It's mindset. A lot of it is mindset and realizing to be the bigger, better person. I'm a delayed gratifier. So I believe in long term and want better in the long term, but knowing that you have to do a lot of work in the present.
So you got patience.
Oh, yes.
Where you buy that from?
What?
Can you buy patience,
I would have been a
please?
gazillionaire if that was the case.
Does Amazon, hey, Vinny, does Amazon sell patience?
I don't know about
He
that.
said he don't know.
But,
Oh, man.
yeah, it's patience. You can ask my husband. I can wait you out.
Wow.
I can wait you out.
Steadfast.
Yep.
Long suffering. So for me, both of my parents have passed, and I've learned that like the anger, the abuse, the addictions, I likely picked all that up from my dad. Depression, anxiety, codependency, my mom, and they're both passing, so I can't talk to them to ask any questions, get some clarification, get some closure. I have to forgive them and give them grace and understand that things happen in their life that caused them to be the way they were, and that they were trying to do their best. They did their best, the best that they could. And they gave us a good life as kids, but like, I'm the oldest, and my life was totally different. I went a whole different path than my brother and my sister.
One thing that as you were talking that came to mind is that I believe that you cannot fault someone for what they did not know, but you can fault them for not at least trying and learning to be better.
Yeah.
So
Say that again?